Hello and welcome to another video, and I guess first of all I've got to apologise. I'm filming this on the 5th of November and you may hear quite a lot of fireworks going off outside. I've waited as long as I can. It's now come up to 9 o'clock. Hopefully the neighbours have finished their ones. I've done mine already. But yeah, you may hear some fireworks in the background. See it as free special effects for the video. But hope you're going to enjoy this one. This is going back to the New Forest and we're looking at Ringwood. But just before we start, I just want to say thank you to everyone for all your support. And to remind you that when you subscribe to my channel, make sure you've put your notifications on. So at the moment, only 19% of you have put your notifications on. So that means when I post a new video out, you don't get the full notifications. So that is where it says subscribe, you got the bell, hit the bell and make sure it's set to all notifications, and then you'll never miss out on the video. So Ringwood was recorded in the charter in 1961, so it's got quite a documented history, and it's soon become a very important little area of the country because you had like Portsmouth, Southampton and Port just a few miles down the road, and a nice sort of halfway distance between there and Bristol. So it's a quite a important little trading area. And it's set up as a market town originally, but then it was used a lot by illicit traders, shall we say. And it has quite a deep history in the smuggling industry. Now this is only a few miles from Burley, so that is why Burley was also a part of this, where you'd get traders and smugglers from Ringwood going over to Burley to do their business, and why the coaching houses in Burley were so busy, and why the coaching houses in Ringwood were so busy. And we are going to talk about the original White Hart Pub. Yes, the original White Hart. So we'll get into it a bit later, but when you hear of pubs called the White Hart, they're not the original White Hart. This one in Ringwood is the original White Hart Pub. But I'm actually going to jump straight into the paranormal side of Ringwood straight away, because the history of the paranormal side is just ridiculous. It does seem nearly every other building in Ringwood has a ghost story attached to it. Now I don't know if that's because people just want to have their own ghost story, because Joe Bloggs down the road had a ghost story, but it does seem there's a lot. So you've got like the corn exchange. It seems that every town has a corn exchange. Their corn exchange is haunted. This one doesn't have Charles Dickens haunting it like most of them, but again this one has the same. Well actually, you know, this one is pretty run down, to be truthful. It looks a bit of a mess. I think at one point it might have been a shopping centre or indoor market, so it's not in the greatest state of repair, but it did have the history behind it, and I can hear all the fireworks going off, so it may get loud in a second. I'm not going to start shouting over them, but walking down the side of it, I do know of the gentleman with the tricorn hat. Now he's meant to be seen walking down the alleyway and into the main high street. Some people believe that he has come from the meeting house. Now the meeting house is another haunted location. I did go to the meeting house. I filmed it and I haven't got a filming. Don't know where that's gone. So you can say that's paranormal. It's disappeared. I took photos of it. I was even able to go inside it. I didn't take photos and filming it when I was there because there's actually people in there having a service, so I didn't want to do that. But I walked around it, I filmed it, and none of that video exists. I ain't going to say that's paranormal because I do have a habit of not pressing record when I think I have pressed record, so it's not the first time I've lost footage. So basically the meeting house is a 18th century chapel built around about 1720, and it's got a very long history of strange events taking place. People have been sitting there, say they hear children crying along the balconies along the top, the floorboards creak and bang when there's no one in there. It's a bit like the fireworks at the moment. But then also you've got the ghostly figures that are seen to cross the floor when people are coming in for services. So people are coming in to sit down for a service and they will see these figures move across the side of the church or the chapel, and they're not real people. They are just like your silhouetted shadows of what we'd call a ghost going across the floor. This disturbed quite a lot of people. So in 1906, Our old friends, we believe, was either the Ghost Club or another sort of group or formation like that, did go and look into it. And what they come out with was that they believe all these ghosts in that meeting house are due to women, children and men being buried in the crypt underneath those seats before they were moved to a different cemetery. So they were there, so they were sort of like buried there sort of illegally and sort of storage there before they were moved on to another cemetery and before deaths had to be registered. So that is their conclusion that they come up with, that these people are not at rest. For me, that doesn't really fit in, because now if we take all the spirit stuff as said, that these people have been buried in a chapel, is a holy chapel, is a holy ground, so they should be at rest and at peace. Does that mean that something else was covered over, that maybe these people didn't die of illness, or maybe they were off, using a different term, done away with, so got out of the way, and less of an inconvenience for certain people, that would not be out of the realms of believability when you take in terms of that area and the smuggling history that went on. See what I mean by not pressing record? I just filmed a whole section, I didn't press record. So what I was saying is that this chapel was built in 1727, and it was built by Presbyterian dissenters or nonconformists. And it seems that Ringwood, over the centuries, has always had its hand in stirring up trouble and mixing the pot. So James Whitaker was the first priest to preach from the new pulpit in that chapel, and that is in 1727. But he was actually the great grandson of Alice Lyles, who was executed on the act of Christian charity. She was actually executed in Winchester, but it does seem that this place just wanted to cause trouble for itself. Now, she had actually got mixed up in the Monmouth Rebellion. That is a uprising against the Catholic King James II, and you can hear more about that later on with the Duke of Monmouth. We're looking at his ghost and what happened to him. Alice was executed in 1685. So it does seem that a lot of this stuff goes on in that area, that they like to cause trouble for themselves. And maybe this town has so many ghost stories is that they got involved in high stake situations that led to many unnecessary deaths. That said, I do have to mention the Tomb of Mary. It does seem that during the high period of mortality, which is the reason why death records weren't kept and why bodies were just put under that chapel, that there was a tomb, and this lady Mary was buried there. She is said to be the reason why that building is haunted, and it is her ghost that is seen walking across the floors of that building. Over the years, this has been under many investigations of so many different paranormal teams. Well, I'm going to say that if you go to look up the history of this building, be careful, because many people have gone there and looking for ghosts that are not even linked to that building. They are actually linked to Ringwood Manor in the USA. But they've gone there, spending the whole evening doing investigations, looking for this man and all this sort of stuff that is meant to haunt it, and they've got the wrong stuff. That is Ringwood Manor in New Jersey, I think, in America. So yeah, it does seem that there's a crossover of information, and going through the research online stuff is all mixed up. So again, my stuff comes from books and old books, so yeah, be careful, because you will go down the wrong road when you're looking at the meeting house. Stick to the old written literature that you can sort of trust, if there's any trust in paranormal. So now let's get to the original White Hart Pub. The story goes that Henry VII was deer hunting around the area, and he killed a white stag. Because he'd done that on that land where the pub was given the official name, the White Hart Pub. And that was the first White Hart Pub in the country. And that is why it's called the original White Hart Pub. and they stand by that. And even though the building is 18th century, there's parts of that building that are a lot older, and the fireworks are trying to beat me in talking. I believe it. I've gone away, looked at the history records, and yes, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this is the original White Hart Pub, and everything that they say is true about it. I'm not saying the ghost stuff is true about it, but the ghost stuff is really interesting. I mean, there's an exorcism there in the 60s that we're going to talk about. And so, as I said, parts of this pub date back a lot older, so 14th century, so we're going way back. The list of paranormal events is quite long, and I'm just going to give you a brief outline of the ones that are most common or that we have. So, tools left out by workmen are mysteriously returned to boxes when their backs are turned. In a function room, chairs are rearranged into neat stacks and tables adjusted, and the items tidied overnight, and the items are tidied overnight. And there's a reason for this we're going to come to. Kitchen staff have arrived to find cutting boards cleaned, utensils organised, prepped areas immaculate despite having left them dirty the night before. We also have other things like, in the 1990s, a night porter witnessed this lady, grey lady, arranging the chairs and stacking them neatly, then disappearing. In 2003, wedding guests reported seeing the grey lady standing in the doorway. And then a chef in 2000 went in to get the food ready, and all the food had been done, and everyone else in that restaurant denied that they had done it. So again, this is attributed to the grey lady. They believe the grey lady is obsessed with order. Now, they're trying to put a name to this grey lady, and mediums have been in there coming up with all these different names, and there's too many different names to actually pin it on. But we do have this ghost of this grey lady that is said to haunt this pub. But in the 60s, things took a little bit of a nasty turn. From what I understand, now I did speak to people in the pub. They have their modern tales of the ghost, which I'll tell you later on. But they also told me some of the old history stuff. I did bump into a great bloke in there, and he told me about the Duke of Monmouth, that I went off and found the house and done all that, and we'll talk about that later on as well. But after I spoke to him, I went outside filming, and again, like I always do, talk to other people. The old bloke comes out of the pub, we're talking, and he knew everything about the history of that pub, and telling me about all the paranormal teams that have been there and investigating. And he said they're all there trying to find this grey lady. And during the conversation, I knew some of this before I went there. I said to him, so what is your take on what happened in the 60s? And he turned around and said what he was told was that from about 1955 to 1960, people in that pub started getting items thrown at their head. And this was becoming more and more common. Now, a lot of people in that pub believed it was one of the staff, and there was a joke going on. But then these glasses and cups started making contact, and people were getting hurt by it. Now, this is before CCTV, so nobody could rule out that this wasn't a joke. But now people were getting hurt by it, they started thinking that no one would actually do that on purpose to really hurt someone. And it comes to a head in 1959 when two staff are standing at the bar. They are the only two people in that bar, when two glasses from behind the shelf fly off and crack them on the back of their heads. This is quite bad. They actually cut and bleeding. They straight away think that somebody has done it to them, and they're very angry, going around trying to find out who it is. They soon find out there's nobody else in that pub that could have done it. Now, I'm not saying the pub was completely empty, but from the angle that the glasses come from, there was no one behind them to be able to throw two glasses at the same time and crack them both on the head at the same time. They believed that this was a ghost that had done it. They started to refuse going into work. In that same time period, staff had been coming down the stairs from the rooms above, and they'd seen this grey lady in front of them. Now, beforehand, apparently the staff had caught glimpses of this lady around the area, and just took it as a maybe a joke that this was the ghost of the Grey Lady. Maybe didn't believe it. Maybe they'd seen things out of the corner of their eye. No one had really had a clear, straight-on view of this Grey Lady until they come down the stairs. She come down the stairs and this Grey Lady is standing right in front of her. Now, the Grey Lady didn't make a sound, but she come up the stairs faster towards the lady, and just before she got right to her face, the lady disappeared. This terrified her. Again, everything is mounting up. People in that bar area, customers and staff, were starting to feel uneasy about what was going on in there, and pressure was being put upon the landlords to do something about it. What seems to be the final clincher that the landlords decided to do something about it was the landlord was walking through the pub, and apparently every door he went past, the door slammed behind him. He was thinking maybe someone was in there, so he quickly spun around, opened up the door, and there was no one there, and the door behind that was also shut. But every door he passed, either behind him or to the side of him, slammed shut. That is when he went to the church and got the church involved to talk about blessings and all this sort of stuff. I don't know the process they went through. I know that in 1960 they did get an exorcism organised in that pub to try and calm everything down. It didn't really work. It eased it off a bit, but this is where we come up with a different ghost. Now, I don't know if this is because the energy of the Grey Lady may have been eased off by the exorcism, allowed the next ghost to come through. But this is the ghost of the boy. Now, if you remember, I turned around and said in the Burley video that the Queen's Head pub there, the stories of this boy that does stuff in that pub was very like the story from the pub that I was going to tell you about in the next video. This is the next video after. No, it's not. I've done the other one before that. But you know what I mean? So, but this boy is, those stories of the boy in the Burley pub line up with the stories of this boy in the White Hart. I believe a lot of those stories crossed over, and they may be a mix of both. So the boy is said to be seen laughing, running through the pub. People have seen him going up and down the stairs. People have seen him running through the pub. Now he's said to be wearing blue trousers, blue puffy sort of trousers, a white shirt with braces. This would put him round about late Victorian times, so not as old as what people believe the Grey Lady is. So when I went in there, as I do, I speak to the bar staff. I'm always expecting a negative reception, don't really ever get it, and they'll go, "Oh, and yeah, this place is haunted," and I'll tell you about it. Bar staff the other night were brilliant. The guy told me all these little stories that go on in the area, from glasses jumping off the bar. He says now when they fall, they don't fall, they jump off the shelves behind him as if something has shoved them and they've flipped and smashed on the floor. But also the doors slam. Now again, we know this from the 1960s, that was the clincher for the exorcism, but he said that often doors in the hallway, which he pointed to, and I do walk up and film a little bit down there. I don't go down there because it looked like it was shut off and it was dark. Not that it was dark, I didn't want to go down there. It just didn't, it looked like it was private. So that door slams and scares everyone in that pub. There's no wind or airflow that could flow through there to cause that door to slam shut. So their explanation is that this is the ghost doing it. And that not only that, the other internal doors in that pub will slam shut even when every window and every outside door is closed. So again, no explanation of wind or breeze causing those doors to shut. Okay, so further through the high street and just down on the left hand side, you keep going past the pizza place that my wife went to, Prezzo. They went there, and I walked the full length of of Market Street, right the way up to the chip shop, right at the end. And that's nearly a mile walk just to get my chips. I don't eat that stuff because of my nut allergies and all that sort of stuff. I have to be careful where I eat. They sat in Prezzo having a nice little meal while I walked up there freezing cold. My back was killing me, my hip was killing me. Got some chips, ate them all the way back down, but I did get to film loads of stuff and meet loads of wonderful people telling me all these stories. So there was a bonus in it. But past Prezzo going down, you can turn off by now, haven't you? But you got the Duke of Monmouth House, or Monmouth House. Now the Duke of Monmouth, James the Duke of Monmouth, caused an uprising in 1685, which we know because Alice got executed for it. When that was unsuccessful, the Duke of Monmouth was imprisoned in that house before being taken off and losing his head at Tower Hill, which, if you go back to my Tower Hill video, you'll see that he's named on the plaque at Tower Hill. So where that little plaque is, where the little rope area is outside the tube station, you got the plaque on the ground. It's got all the names of people that are executed on there. Some of them, not all of them, because it would be a rather long list. But yes, that is where he was executed. Monmouth House is said to be haunted, but also all the way up from Monmouth House up to the church is said to be haunted by the Duke of Monmouth. People say that during the dead of night they hear banging and shouting coming from that building, as if somebody is trying to get out. Now, I know that in 1920, which is probably the best reported one we have, was that a group of people are walking down there late at night. They hear a man shouting for freedom in that house. Now, they knock on the door. The owner comes out and said they don't know what they're on about. There's no one in there shouting out freedom. The owner is aware of the history. The people outside are aware of the history, and they put it down to a ghost. I don't think I've been so quick. I'm like, are you sure you're not hiding something in there now? You're not kidnapped somebody in there? But that is like the main documented one. But apart from that, most of them are the sightings of the Duke being dragged down that street and thrown into that building. Now, I'm guessing that building may have changed over time, because I can't see how it was being a prison. I'm pretty sure that back then, prison, being arrested for that sort of stuff, didn't mean you was thrown straight off into a jail. It was more like a house arrest. So I'm thinking he was put there, told to stay there, guarded, and he couldn't leave the building. So I don't think there's this prison in there. I may be wrong, but that is my take on it. More of a open prison than a proper prison. That said, what also happens around that area? You've got this nice big ornate building at the end, and you've got the church. You've got the church wall that sits right along that building. It's not lit up. That church isn't lit up at all. I'll take some photos here, and it looks creepy. That is where we get probably our most modern ghost that we've spoken about in a long time. About a person who died in 1975, which is quite strange. So in 1975, there's meant to be a very old gentleman that would hang around that area. He did have a house, he wasn't homeless, but he used to spend his days walking the church grounds and coming down by the Monmouth House and going up to the pub. That is his life, that's all he would do, just walk the streets. People initially thought he was homeless. He turned out not to be homeless, but that is what he enjoyed doing. He was out there feeding the wildlife, and that is how he liked it. When he passed away, he was buried in a local cemetery. But then people started still seeing him around the area. Some people reported having conversations with him during the day, going into the pub saying they've been chatting with this guy. They turn around and say, well, you can't have done, he died last year. And these are the sort of reports that went on for quite a few years. Apparently he's not really been seen since about 2005, so we're looking at a period of years that his ghost sort of come back and haunted that area. Now, I briefly spoke about the big ornate building at the end. It's called the Old Bank House. People have turned around and said that over night time they've seen people in the windows of that building, and apparently there shouldn't be people in that building. I take it with a pinch of salt, because this is mainly seen by paranormal teams turning up for investigations in other areas of that place, mainly going to the meeting house, which does seem to be quite a well investigated place for new paranormal teams to go to. But the whole town, also the whole high street marketplace, is said to be haunted by different figures from different periods of time in history. If you was going to document it, I'd be here for ages. A lot of those little shops along there have got their own ghost stories. Even up by the chip shop, one of the shops up there, I was talking to someone, they told me that their building's haunted. One of the other banks over the road told me that they're haunted. So there's a lot of places up there that are haunted, or meant to be haunted. But another one that I kept getting told while I was up there, which is becoming really sort of common, and that is of a horse and coach going through the town. I'm not going to say these are made up ghosts, but it's so common now. And I think on their own, it's not till you're doing this research and you're looking at all the ghost stories, you start seeing certain things line up. Why are horse and coaches always seen as a ghostly figure? Is it because they were such a common thing at the time that, you know, accidents were common on horse and coaches, that maybe the stone tape theory replaying going? Now, this was an important market town, but yeah, it does seem that this horse and coach goes through the marketplace right the way down to the old bank house and to Prez, where my wife had a really nice meal with my daughter while I was up getting my chips. So I'm not bitter. I'll tell you an embarrassing story, right? We was at Premier Inn, just round the corner from the pub and all that, right? On the industrial site over the back. And we got there, literally drove for 5.5 hours. It was a nightmare getting there. Busting the Garloo. Went up. Now, I don't know if anyone else does this, right? Now, we're getting a bit crude here, but when I go to the loo, I put the tap on. I put the tap on, and I'm sitting on the loo, absolutely shattered. Next thing I know, there's all this water around my feet. It's got this plug, and the plug flips like that, yeah? And I was looking for the little plunger to open up the sink. There's not one. I had to put my hand in the sink. Of course, when I'd done that, more water just poured over everywhere. I'd been in that room no more than 30 seconds, and I flooded the bathroom. My wife took a photo. If she still got it, I'll put it in here. But yeah, it weren't good. It really weren't good. I was like, all the towels I had to use and everything, I was just like, you just can't take me anywhere. It's just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. But Ringwood has got so many great ghost stories, and I've only touched upon a few of them. Yeah, there are loads of buildings out there, the barn and all this sort of stuff that I could go into. Yeah, these are the ones mainly in that high street. I've got another video coming up on that area, probably the last video I've got coming up in that area. And I'll tell you now, that's Christchurch. They're good ghost stories from Christchurch. And technically a time slip. So, you know, if I want the clicks, I'll just call it Time Slip of Christchurch, yeah? But most of it's going to be about ghosts, so... But, I'm waffling. My back's so sore. I'm sitting in this chair all the time, editing and filming. My back is going. Old age, it ain't good. Because I've been walking around like in agony for the last 2 days. Since I did the last video, my back ain't been the same. It's just drive me mad. Anyway, thank you for your support. I'm going to go off and have a coffee now before I start editing this one. So take care, and thank you for all your words on the A2 crash, and if it was a time slip or a ghost. Very interesting the split on the views on that. But again, thank you. Like it. Who's going to like this video? I've waffled halfway through this video. Like the video if you liked it. Make sure you turn notifications on. Hype it. Do buy me a coffee if you want to. But again, thank you for all your support watching this. I've got about 2,000 core subscribers now that watch all my videos and comment in most of my videos as well. We've got about 300, 400 people that comment regularly, And there's about 200 of you that I've got to know. I feel that I've got to know through the comments. And yeah, it's great. I love it. But I'm waffling on. Right, I better go. Just keep eating up the minutes. Thank you again. See you soon. Take care. Bye.